South Vietnam, and you could put tremendous firepower on the enemy positions. And they didn't have any equivalent to this. We had two great sources of firepower: artillery, which are big cannons up to 155 millimeter, let's say, 105 millimeter, 155. We had those cannons in South Vietnam, and they didn't. And we had fighters that we could put in next to the fights. Okay? So as an example, this is, let's say, this is equivalent of a squad or whatever, a platoon, let's call it a platoon. So this platoon, say we're fighting some guys that are down by the church, where the church used to be here, okay? This is all jungle, so you can't see anything. But our lead scouts, Drew was one of our lead scouts, and he ran into their lead scouts, and luckily neither of them killed the other, which is not what generally happens. Generally, when two forward scouts on the units meet up with each other, one guy immediately blows the other guy away with a 12-gauge shotgun, okay? But anyway, let's say they both made that, so we know we were down there, right? So we called the Air Force. First of all, we have artillery hitting them almost immediately. There's all kinds of explosions over by that church. There's no explosions here. There's no explosions here. We're U.S. infantry. We have artillery that's shooting at them, but they don't have any artillery that's shooting at us, okay? And we call up the Air Force, you know, like, I'm assigned right at the Special Forces camp we're operating at, and I'm always overhead. So they say, we got this, these guys are over here, you know, 150 yards, such and such a heading. So I'm in the air, I can see the heading, I can see where our guys are, because we pop a smoke grenade with purple smoke, okay? So I see the purple, I got purple smoke, because the bad guys will pop smoke too. So I see purple smoke, yeah, that's us. So I know where we are, right? So then I know where they are, I know where they're by that, of course it's just jungle, but I know that they're where that church is over there, right? So then when the fighters come in, the fighters are scrambled and on the way from the bases, and they have, you know, you have 16, 20 fighters coming in, each with about 750-pound bombs or 500-pound bombs of high explosive, okay? So when they come, when they're overhead, I say, I got troops in contact here. I cut off the artillery so the artillery doesn't shoot down our fighters. You don't get hit by artillery as you're doing your dive bomb. And I mark that church with a puff of white smoke. These guys are up at 15, 20,000 feet, and I have them dive bomb on a heading that doesn't overfly Maria Stein, because the bombs go long and short all the time. You know, these dive bombs, which are 700 miles an hour as they're coming down at a 60-degree dive, and if they're a little long or a little short on thick one, the bombs can go long or short, but as long as they're not flying over, they don't go left or right, so they can hit that church and not hit us, okay? So you got 50, 100 bombs going on those guys over there. Right? What are they gonna do? They gonna run at us through the jungle? We're all on the ground with automatic rifles, all right, spread out. What are they gonna do? They're gonna die, all right? They didn't have any of that. So we lost 60,000 troops. The North Vietnamese in 1995, this is just North Vietnam, this isn't the 300,000 guerrillas that were wiped out. They said they lost 1.2 million infantry in South Vietnam. And it was because of that, because of firepower. See that? They didn't have that, right? They had to bring everything they had into the fight down by truck convoys through North Vietnam, and they had no transports landing in planes, they had no ships coming into ports, and they had no supplies like that. They didn't have good food, they didn't have good anything. So they were very good fighters, but they didn't have the support. And I don't care. Americans are very good fighters. All of us are good fighters, believe me. Okay? God made us like that for some reason. And generally, countries have pretty good soldiers. But if the soldiers don't have, we can sit here as brave as we can be, and when the bombs come down, a bomb hits this room and we're all dead. See that? So, you know, in war, there's a place for using your head. And as an example, you would never get together like this in an infantry fight. We'd be every, the Marines, as they're going across the field, they're 20, 30 yards apiece apart, each one. Okay, if they're in any kind of open terrain. Because if the bad guys are in a tree line and they open up, the most they can do is kill one man, right? The others are immediately on the ground, see? So you basically have to use your head in war. But anyway, the basic idea is I had 400 missions supporting those infantry units. And then I moved into North Vietnam and I volunteered for a very good unit called Misty, which was top secret, all volunteer. And our job was to do the same thing in North Vietnam, and it was to knock out truck convoys. The truck convoys would move only at night, because in the daytime, if they're on the roads and we bomb the dead, we had complete air superiority in North Vietnam as well as South Vietnam. If they try to move, they're gonna move those trucks down, 600, 700 miles, 1,000 miles on open roads. And they can't do that, when we have air superiority. But at night, we can't hit them. We can't see them, so they move at night and they sleep during the day. So, but during the day, they can't get into the jungle, so what they do is they just pull over to the side of the road under the part of the canopy, and the bombing flights coming in which we had 100 fighters a day coming in, they can't see them when they're pulled over to the side of the road. They can't see that convoy. These convoys are 200 and 300 trucks at a time coming in. The Russians are sending the supplies to the port of Haiphong. They put them in these convoys and they come down on this road and then across the passes into Laos and then down the Ho Chi Minh Trail down Laos and Cambodia, and they stage at the border and come in and hit and run us. They hit and run against us. They come into, we're not allowed to go into, by rules of engagement, our leadership wouldn't let us go into Laos and Cambodia. So we had to just sit there and wait till they came into South Vietnam on surprise attacks, and then we'd take them on as they came into Vietnam. So these are 200 and 300 truck convoys, but you can't see them. But we had F-100s, and we just had marking rockets like we had on those little white planes with the infantry. We had 14 rockets that we could fire that give a puff of white smoke on the ground. Okay, that's all we had. We didn't have the big heavy bombs on the wings, so we could fly down low, and we each had our own tanker. So as an example, if all of us are Misties, there was only 13 Misties, but if we were all Misties, as we went up into North Vietnam, we had our own tanker right on the border of Laos, and we could go refuel twice during a mission. Only took 15 minutes air-to-air refueling to get a full tank of gas. So these fighters only had about an hour and a half, 2 hours of fuel. But with that tanker, we could have 5.5-hour missions. And during that 5.5-hour mission, we'd be going along those roads back and forth, right? Down on the deck, And on the deck, just above the trees, as you're flying along, you can see the trucks on the side of the road, right? So here's the convoy, son of a gun, right? So now you call the big brass, this command ship over in Laos, and they send all the fighters airborne to you because you got a hot, good target. So when the fighters get overhead, and you might have, depending on the length of the convoy, you might have, 3 flights of 4, 5 flights of 4, 6, 8 flights of 4. When you have flights of 4 fighters each, you mark the front of the convoy. They can see the road, they just can't see the trucks that are parked. You mark the front of the convoy with 1 smoke and the back of the convoy with the second smoke. Now the fighters have perfect targeting. They just go right along the road with their bombs and strafe and anything else they have, right? And just blow these trucks to smithereen. You have secondary explosions everywhere. They're bringing our troops down and our troops back. And the troops are running into the jungle. You got ammunition trucks blowing up. Just a mass catastrophe for those convoys. So that's what we did on a daily basis as this scouting unit, Misties. So the one thing that's different is that those trucks do get out in the daylight when there is low clouds. Like if the clouds are down. So this one day the clouds are down. Now the trucks are on the road in the daytime. beautiful target in the daytime. And we have F-100s, we're not carrying bombs, but we're carrying 20mm cannons, 4 20mm cannons. We have 6,000 rounds per minute rate of fire. That's 100 rounds a second. And when you're traveling 600 miles an hour, you're putting like a hand grenade every 10 feet. So you can imagine going along a line of trucks and putting a hand grenade every 10 feet. 2 per truck. You do a lot of damage, right? So the ops officer, bad weather day like that, asked me, you wanna come up with me? Nobody's in North Vietnam. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So we went up there. Now we flew as one ships. We were scouts, so we could go all by ourselves. So we went under those clouds, and sure enough, here's all these convoys. So all afternoon, we attacked 3 different convoys and used up all our ammo and did a lot of damage to those convoys. And after the afternoon is over, we're coming home, we have no ammunition left. But there was the North Vietnamese had between 150 and 180,000 anti-aircraft cannon. And they had 40,000 50 caliber machine guns, anti-aircraft, tripod mounted, if you've ever seen those in the movies, okay? So the fire in North Vietnam was incredibly intense. When we were weaving back, the reason nobody got down by the ground is because you're constantly in incredible tracer fire by cannons and machine guns, okay? And those cannons are radar cannon. And you know what a radar cannon does? A radar cannon goes beep with a radar beam, beep, 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 tracking a plane or a fighter. And then it does mathematics and it says, okay, this is where, that's how he's flying. So he's gonna be here 4 seconds from now. The time of flight of my shell is 4 seconds at that distance. So I'll fire the cannon here and he'll fly right into the explosion, right? So that's what a radar cannon does, beep, 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 fire, and so on and so on. But we're always turning constantly, right? Now those radar cannons can't hit us except by accident because we're not tracking like an airliner. We're tracking, they don't know where we're gonna be 4 seconds in advance. So that's what you do when you're down in heavy fire like that. But it's really very interesting. It's better than any movie you ever saw, the kind of fire we're in for 3 hours on each mission, and we were flying those missions in Misty. It was a great, great unit. It was all volunteers. Still, those 13 men are the best, and I've been around really good units, you know, in the military and in business. I worked for IBM and, you know, a number of different really good outfits. And I've never been among men that were so outstanding. And I'll tell you what it takes to be an outstanding man. Saint Joseph. You know, the saints say that he's number 1 in heaven, you know, over everybody. You know, the Catholics, in the Catholic canon law, Mary is number 1. And there's only one. Dulia is revered saints, all the saints in heaven. Like hopefully we all get to heaven, we will be revered, you know, as saints. I mean, this is like Teresa of Avila, revered. You know, all the apostles revered, okay? But the highest revered, there's only one with the title in Catholic canon law in our theology. There's only one with the title highest revered, right? And that's Mary. And then there's only one with the title first revered, protodulia, and that's Saint Joseph. Well, I was among men that were as close to Saint Joseph as you could imagine. Nobody brags. Everybody's just doing their job. You know, humble people. That's how you want to be as a man or a woman, just doing your job. Don't talk about yourself. Don't worry about yourself. Work for work for your wife, your children, all your friends. The heck with yourself, you know. Saint Joseph, I'm telling you, that's the right answer. If you could do that good, you're doing good because it's so hard because of the pride we all have, you know, thinking we're better than other people, which is, you know, just so wrong. Everybody is a masterpiece, everybody. And that's, I'm talking 8 billion people, masterpieces, you know. He doesn't make anything but masterpieces. He's the artist, you know. Everyone is a masterpiece. I found out out of prison camp when I'm with somebody in a concrete coffin for years, you know. You're with this guy and you think, of course, you know, you got the pride of 24 years old, you're strong, you're a good athlete, good student, all this kind of thing. You think you're something special, you know. And then you get in with this guy and you find out this guy's just as good as I am. He's an encyclopedia, for God's sakes. I thought I was the only one that had tremendous abilities and stuff like that. Nope, this guy's just as good. And everybody you're with, you find that out in life. And so it's very good for humility because you realize that we're just all made, and we're all made as masterpieces, and it's just, there's no exception to that. And that's why he says, don't judge each other, don't you dare. You know, you can't do it, it's impossible. You don't know where the guy's been born, you don't know what he was given, you don't know what gifts God gave us, you know, you don't know how he starts, what he thinks, who he's been with, what influence he's had, what teaching, what school. There's no way in heck you can judge anyone on this earth, you know. You gotta just respect everybody and really, really, really make that a thing. So anyway, so we're up there, so now the next thing we're gonna do is knock out some of these guns. Because of supply purposes, our units, our artillery function as 8 gun batteries, okay? But they use 36 gun batteries so that they can supply 36 guns at once, you know, with a supply truck. And they're all together and out in the fields, and they're scattered out in the field. There's 10 guys per gun. And some of these guys, it's like everything. Some of these guys are commanded by commanding officers that make them very, very good against shooting down planes. And they hit you, or they knock down one of your guys that you're putting in on strikes or whatever. And so there's over a period of time when you're operating in an area, you know where the best guns are, the best gunners. So, but you weren't supposed to, because it's you take losses doing it. But what we would try to do is wipe out the best gun sites, you know, the top 36 gun sites, which are about 300 soldiers down there manning those guns. So basically, what we would do was, if you found out where they were, they're all camouflaged with tree branches and everything like that. If you find out where they are, they would move, so you couldn't hit them in the daytime. But at night, they didn't like to move because it's 300 guys and they're going to cut new trees, camouflage new positions, and new fields and everything. They're not by landmarks, they're out in the middle of fields and everything like that. So what you do is you find out their position late afternoon, which is where we are now. We're out of ammo, we're about to go home. So we circle this gun site, give them a target, a nice target, and they start firing at us. And we're plotting on 1 to 50,000 maps, which are large scale maps, which are like, we didn't have GPS, but you can identify positions like GPS really close. So we're plotting these things, and one of the shells hits just behind me. In fact, it's a 57 millimeter. It comes right to my head. These things are way out in front of you, you know, hundreds and hundreds of them, and then they fall through you, and most of them are moving. But this one stopped because it's going to hit us. So it comes right to my head, so I duck my head, figure, oh, my only chance is it's a dud, because if it explodes, it's going to take my head off. So, but we're moving at, 600 miles an hour, so it doesn't hit me in the cockpit. It hits about 4 feet behind, but there's both hydraulic pumps and both hydraulic reservoirs. Bad engineering. If you got main and alternate, they ought to be separated out in a fighter, right? But they weren't. They're all together. So anyway, the shell took out all the controls, and the plane is at 600 miles an hour, about 1,500 feet above the ground, and it goes like this, right into the ground. Okay, so we've got no choice, no control. We eject upside down. Looks like you're gonna put your head in the ground, But the chute opened. It's like a streaming chute. but I had just gotten a Randall survival knife. Does anybody here know what a Randall survival knife is? It's a custom knife. It's a custom knife, and it's got a hollow stainless steel handle, so you can get the flight surgeons to prescribe you go pills, like you lose part of an arm or you're badly wounded. This thing will let you take these pills. They're bad drugs, you know, they'll let you take tremendous pain and let you go for days, so that you're in the jungle and you're running away from people, and they can go for maybe a day and night or a day and night and a day, but they're gonna run out, and you can go for, 2, 3, 4 days, because this thing is overriding your body, and all that kind of stuff. So I had those in the handle and so on, but it was very expensive back then. It still is now. There's 7 years. There are a 7-year backlog on those knives if you order a Randall knife. But anyway, I had a Randall knife, and I just got it a week before. I waited 13 months for it. Thank God I had it, because I had a tangled chute, where you get a tangle and you're not having a chute, it's a screaming chute. So I would have went into the ground and been killed. But with stretching as far as I could with just the tip of this thing, they're razor sharp. Just the half inch of this thing, I could cut a couple of risers, which let the tangle clear and the chute inflate. Now I had a chute. I'd been through airborne training, so I knew how to steer it into a little patch of woods. Just like around here, you got patches of woods in the middle of the farm fields, okay? Same deal. So I steer in the patch of woods. The buddy I'm with, my instructor, I was a pilot, and my instructor didn't know how to steer a chute, so he came down the field, and they had 4 or 5, AK-47s on him as he hit, so he was captured immediately. I got to these woods, I ran away from them a couple times, to make a long story short, and I hit again after 15 minutes. I got into a place I thought I had a chance. It has to get dark for me to make it across the valley. There's mountains on all sides of this valley. To get there, though, I gotta get away from hundreds and hundreds of people that are after me, because as soon as that plane got hit and the chutes came out, you had gong, 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 and all these little towns around the area in the valley, and all, literally thousands of people came out of these towns to get these pilots that are coming down, okay? So you got all kinds of people after you. So I'm buried in the mud, buried in the thing, and I made a couple of Mayday calls, but there's nobody else in North Vietnam. So basically, I'm facing down. I got a green flight suit on. I'm in jungle, and I've got 2 paths the paths are all over these woods, and there's 2 paths that are not far away from me. But in about 30 minutes, I have about 20 patrols go by me on both paths. So I made a mistake that everybody makes, of thinking, of not realizing that God's in charge, okay, and thinking that I got it made. Okay, I know the future. I got this. It's dark. It's getting real dark. They missed me. With the dark, I can get to the mountains, right? I have a chance of getting through the people. I have a chance of getting to the mountains. I have a chance. So in my mind, I think, okay, as I look out the side of my eyes and I see that it's getting really pretty dark, I think, okay, now I got it. As soon as I thought, now I got it, just like happens to everybody on earth, okay? Because God's in charge, we're not in charge of anything. You don't know the future, nobody does. So basically, just as I thought I got it, I hear, just from about, 15 feet away, and I don't move, I don't do anything. After about, 5 seconds of this yelling, I look up and I'm looking down at 2 AK-47 barrels from about 15 feet away. And I'm looking at 2 soldiers. 2 soldiers are covering me like this. Of course, it's all Vietnamese, Get out of there, get out of there. It was almost worth getting captured to see the look on their face. I love soldiers, soldiers are really good guys, it's like you're doing the best you can, and stuff like that. So I very quietly get up, and I move very, very slowly over to them. Now there's a 2-man patrol out of the squad. They were a 12-man squad. Pretty soon all 12 of the soldiers are there. They stay back away from me and they motion, get off your clothes and so on. So now I'm down to my boxers, no boots, combat boots, no socks. So of course I'm gonna escape. There's no way they're gonna keep me prisoner, right? It doesn't have, it's the movies, you know, you're gonna escape. So now I'm down in my underwear, so as I'm standing in my underwear with my hands tied really tightly behind me, not like in the movies where they pick up their ropes, you know, and they undo them. My hands are really tied bad. And I have ropes between my ankles. Did you ever hear of a shackle? I didn't know what a shackle was, but it's a short rope between your ankles where all you can do is shuffle along. You can't run away, you know, you see what I'm saying? Okay? So, as I'm standing there and I'm like that, I think, this is not gonna be easy. Escaping this is not gonna be easy, this is ridiculous. So here comes a commanding officer of these 12 men. And he comes down the road and he's, you know, saying like, what are you doing? You know, he's yelling. These other guys weren't, you know, doing anything to me or anything. He's yelling at me, you know, you coming down and dropping bombs on our people and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And what are you doing here? You know, all this kind of crap, right? And he comes walking up to me like that. And I'm the innocent American just standing there. Perfectly innocent. Okay. And this is so good because this is a Korean War comic books. I grew up with the Korean War comic books, see, in the early 50s, right? And in the Korean War comic books, you have about, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 little pictures on each page as they tell the story in the Korean War comic book, right? And in all these things, you have the American soldiers and you have the communist soldiers of North Vietnam, right? And the American soldier was always perfectly innocent. And the communist soldier was always, I'm mean. Okay? And that's what I was in. I was innocent. Just standing there, minding my own business. And here's this guy. As he's walking up to me, and he slaps me. Like a girl would slap me. I said, for God's sakes, buddy, I'm a soldier. You can at least kick me in a bad place, or you could, you know, punch me or something, but don't slap me like a girl. Give me some respect here, would you? Jeez, man. Or he slaps me and then he backs down, you know. But this same guy saved my life about, you know, 5 or 10 minutes later. Because what they did was they walked me out into the fields. And after we got out into the fields a little while, there's crowds of civilians in the fields. And there's hundreds of civilians come running from all directions. You guys use tractors here, but they use machetes to do they don't have tractors. They use machetes for doing their gardening, their farming. So they all have machetes, men and women. And so they're running from all directions, screaming, okay? And we'd seen a couple of guys, you know, cut the pieces like this in Misty's that we were trying to get out, you know, after they got shot down. And we were trying to get them out, but they were surrounded by these crowds and just cut into little pieces, okay? So I figured, oh, well, that's the end of that, you know? No way out of this. But this guy that had slapped me gives a command to his soldiers. I've been through Marine bayonet training in the U.S., and I watched, and they use Marine manuals in the North Vietnamese Army. So I see this guy go through Marine drill, you know, unsheath bayonets, and they take their bayonets out, fixed bayonets on the AK-47s, and then obviously something that meant surround the prisoner. They surrounded me with their backs to me. He had the rifles up at like at a parade rest, and then he had them lower, as the crowd keeps coming in screaming like crazy, he has them lower the bayonets, and then he shouted something as they're about 15, 20 yards out, that I think was the next command is fire, because it stopped them dead, finally. And then he gave another command, and they opened a hole in the circle, and his guards go by on each side of me as we went through the circle. We marched 2 hours and got to this little hut at 11 o'clock at night, and there was a woman there cooking cassava roots like potatoes. It's an underground food, like a potato, and she was cooking this pot of this little bamboo hut with a dirt floor. And I had a meal. I was wondering, what's going on here? What do they feed? Because we hadn't heard of anybody shot down. We just figured they were killing everybody, and every time we saw them, they got killed as they got captured, you know. So we actually lost 6 out of 7 guys killed in North Vietnam. You know, we had 3,500 guys, 3,500 air crews shot down and not rescued, and 472 came back. 500 came back out of 3,500, and most of those, they maybe killed 100, 150, and I was in 6 camps, in the camps we were at, but that wasn't where the slaughter was. The slaughter was when they were captured by the crowds out in the fields. Like if somebody came down one of these fields, you know, from Russia, from any country that we're in a real fight with, you get trouble surviving. Remember, he's got a gun out there. He's got a revolver. I didn't have one because I lost it. I was shot down twice. They hadn't put the gun back in my harness from the first shoot down. But generally, any pilot comes down, he's got a gun. So all our guys around here with rifles, you know, I don't think they'd let some pilot go far without gunning them down. Because you'd be afraid the guy's gonna start firing, which guys do. So basically, anyway, so now they're taking me out of this guy just saved my life. I get taken to a small town in the countryside, 1,000 people. I stay with the mayor's wife, the mayor of the town and his wife, and 4 kids and a guard across the little hut. It's a 15-foot by 25-foot bamboo hut, dirt floor. This is their house. This is the mayor. This is how they all live. This is communism. She would cook a twig fire twice a day to feed myself, her husband, her 4 kids, which are like 8 to 16, I'd guess. Okay, and the guard. And she'd have 1 pot of rice. She'd twigs and leaves only, on the dirt floor, in this, no kitchen cabinets. They each had 2 pair of pajamas. We had 2 pair of pajamas for 5 years in prison camp. You know, you'd rinse one out in the summertime. You'd rinse one out on once a week. They'd take you to a cistern, a little enclosed bathroom, a little enclosed cistern, just a little thing with a cistern in it, and you could rinse your pajamas out. You don't have underwear, you don't have anything like that. You got 2 pajamas, okay? Well, that's what their people had, 2 pair of pajamas. 1 pair of pajamas for each of these 6 people is on a little peg on the wall. There's no closets. There's no kitchen cabinets, you know. The kitchen instruments are a pot, so they cook the rice. There's no salt for that rice. There's no pepper for that rice. There's no seasoning for that rice. We had that pot of rice twice a day. Just like in the prison camp later on, we had a little loaf of bread and water, twice a day. That was it, about 600, 800 calories. That's why in a communist country, the people are so small, because the government takes everything and the people get nothing except enough to keep them barely alive, you know, to be slaves for the leaders. Anyway, so I spent 4 days there, and then I'm taken to the first little camp, which was a holding camp. This is, again, one of these bamboo huts, dirt floor, and they put 3 cells, about 4 feet by 5 foot on each side of it. Kramer's put in this one, I'm put in this one, there's two cells empty on both sides. The guards always sit in the middle. They don't want you to talk to any other American. They're always trying to keep you alive. Because it's a bamboo hut, they've got us in irons, you know, leg irons and handcuffs, okay? Because there's no security in a bamboo hut. You know, you can break through a bamboo wall, right? So we're in irons, and we're there, and a few days go by, and all of a sudden in the middle of the night, there's somebody brought in, obviously another POW brought in. There's just 2 of us in that little holding camp down in the rural part of North Vietnam. And so this guy's brought in, and we hear the people put him in the cell, just 2 away from me, which is only like 8 feet from me, across the hallway from Craner. So the next morning, there wasn't enough room. These things are 4 feet by 5 foot, whatever. There wasn't enough room for a bucket. Generally, you're going to the bathroom in a bucket. In these prison camps, I was in 6 camps. You have a bucket in the cell. You squat on the bucket to go to the bathroom. Okay. In the morning, you put the bucket. They got the guards come by. They open the door for each cell. You put the bucket outside. Then some other POWs come by. They grab the buckets and they dump them down a French latrine. You know how a French latrine is? Ever been to France? It's just holes in the ground. You know. Okay. There's no toilets or anything like that, so they dump these buckets down and they put them back empty, and they come by a little later and they open the door and you take your empty bucket. Now you get a bathroom for the next 24 hours, right? So, anyway, in this camp though, there was no room for the buckets, so they take us outside, we go outside this little bamboo hut. So as I'm going outside, the guards in front of me, they just have bamboo doors on this hut. So I push in on the bamboo door to see this guy, the guard's in front of me, and give him a high sign, which is an obscene sign, okay? And I look at him and I can't believe it, looks like a 12-year-old American kid that's a skeleton. And I'm wondering what's happening here. What's going on here, okay? So about 2 hours later, they get Craner and I out of our cells and they have us go in and pick this guy up. They wrapped his left leg in bandages because he's got 2 bones sticking out of it. When he hit the rocks, he broke his leg with compound fracture and the bones are sticking out of his leg. So he can't walk, he can't get up, and they wrap him so tight with the bandages, he can't bend his leg or anything like that. So we pick him up, now we gotta clean him up, clean up his bottom parts and all his kind of these filthy dirty. He's been evading for 45 days, they captured him, and the North Vietnamese told him he knocked the guy out, and knocked the guard out and escaped for another half a day. They got him again, so now he's in really terrible shape. So we pick him up. When we pick him up, he's taller than we are. Craner and I are both over 6 feet. And I look at, Craner's on the other side, I look at Craner and I say, gee, this guy's tall. This guy's a big guy. Remember, I thought he was a 12-year-old kid, And he looks at me from this distance and he says, aren't you Guy Gruters? And I did a double take and I said, who are you? He says, Lance. I said, Lance who? He says, Saigon, Lance Saigon. I said, oh no, not Saigon. Not Saigon. Not Saigon. Just like that. I was in total shock. This guy was in my squadron at the Air Force Academy for 3 years. In my squadron. We were good friends. He was on the football team. I was in the judo and the boxing teams. He's over 200 pounds. Now he's about 60 pounds. He evaded for 45 days without any food. Took him 10 days to find some water. But I could pick him up like you pick up a sack of concrete, 60 pounds. Okay. To give you an idea, there's no, in his hands, because he has to use his hands, he had to use his hands to get out of the mountains, in rocks, in karst country, slip, very sharp rocks anyway. He has to push himself along on his butt because he can't use his legs. So he's got to push himself along like that. So his fingers are all just bones and tendons, all right? No flesh. His leg bones, his arm bones, everything like that are just bones wrapped in skin. Bones wrapped in skin, all right? I got some pictures of it later on. If we got time, I'll show you some pictures of it. I'll talk about that later. Anyway, the basic idea is that they start interrogating him immediately and they're beating him with the bamboo clubs. And when they beat anybody wounded, they beat him on the wounds. So they're beating him on his broken bones. Name, rank, service number, date of birth, and that's all they'll give me. Won't give him anything else. And they're beating the crap out of him, for three different bad beatings. So the next morning when we take him out to clean him up, let him go to the bathroom, Craner, Bob Craner, who's a major, I'm a brand new captain, I still have lieutenant bars on. Craner's in charge, he's the ranking guy. He says, Lance, you can give him some information, we're supposed to give him information. After you do what you can, just lie to him, give him lies, just don't answer him, Don't answer the right thing, don't give him anything right, He said, that's all right, sir, I can take it. But he couldn't take it. They beat him to death over the next couple of weeks. And the last couple of days, to try to save his life when he couldn't talk anymore, they put him in with us, and so he basically died in our arms, And the last few days, all they could do was blink once for yes, blink twice for no, So, and they took him, and another thing they did was they took him and they used him for open heart surgery practice, So I got in terrible. You're being tortured yourself, but you're not being tortured like this guy. He was totally helpless. So basically I got in terrible hatred. The first time in my life I got in hatred of people. And after a few months of thinking, you know, how can I ever get even, like I would just think horrible with things that I would do to these guys. When I was fighting in combat, I had no hatred for the enemy whatsoever, none. That's the way it's gotta be, always, never. But I got a terrible hatred, which, I had voices in the mind. I had the devils come in, talk me into stop eating, and really beat them guy, you just, you know, they're very persuasive, you know. All you gotta do is stop eating, you know, they'll never get anything from you, they'll never get anything from you, you know. We had guys get talked into, and we had guys commit suicide, about 20 of them. So, but I knew suicide was wrong, luckily. I had Sister Thomas Ann in 8th grade. I only had 5 years of parochial school, but Sister Thomas Ann had 50, this is North Jersey, she has 50 students, you know, in the early 50s and mid 50s, whatever. And she was outstanding, 5'2", absolute fear, terror, a part of all 50, including 25 wise guys like me, you know, North Jersey wise guys. Okay, and so basically, you know, she maintained absolute iron control. Most fearsome thing in Sister Thomas Ann's room is when she goes. The habit comes up on the left, the habit comes up on the right, she grabs a yardstick, and she comes after, you know, you talked, or you did something wrong, okay? And here she comes, this 5'2" monster. And she starts pounding the hell out of your head with the edge of the yardstick, okay, as hard as she can. And of course, you're a North Jersey wise guy. You can't defend yourself, that would be being a wimp. You gotta just take these hits. So to give you an idea of one of these funny things, there was a girl I really loved, 8th grade, you know, how you love a girl in 8th grade, so I loved Virginia. Virginia was just I'm in the far right I'm in the far right corner in the back of this 50-person class, 8th grade. To my left is Rich Tredego. You know, we're two of the wise guys. You know, the wise guys are always trying to be as far away as you can from anything being taught, or the teachers, or anything like that, or the nice girls. The girls are always in the front, you know, and always sweethearts, but we're not sweethearts. So anyway, we're back here, so I tell Rich, I said, Rich, you know, as I'm coming back from dumping something in the trash or something, talk to Virginia, who's right in front of him. So as I'm coming back from the front of the class, he's talking to Virginia, and I grab her pen, her fountain pen. Now I have her fountain pen. So I fill her fountain pen with ink, you know, the top of her fountain pen. So then I give it to Rich, who says, Virginia, you know, and she turns around, and he gives her the fountain pen. And she says, oh, thank you. And she opens the fountain pen, and the ink gets all over her pretty dress, okay? So she starts crying, and she goes up to the front, Sister Thomas Ann. Thomas Ann. Here comes the yardstick, okay? But I wish I had videos of Tredego. Of course, Virginia thought it was Rich Tredego, see? So I wish I had videos of Tredego as he watched Sister Thomas Ann come up that aisle, right? I'm laughing, watching Tredego, I'm laughing so hard I can't even stand it. I'm trying not to smile or laugh. I can't do it, I'm just laughing so hard. So finally, as Sister Thomas Ann gets close, I said, Sister, it was me, okay? So she turns over to me and starts pounding the crap out of me and stuff like that. So anyway, Sister Thomas Ann on suicide, all right? Here's Sister Thomas Ann on suicide. You never commit suicide, okay? You commit suicide, you're an absolute coward, a quitter. The worst thing in a human being is being a coward and a quitter. So you never do it. But it's worse than that. You brand your family the quitter family. You brand your family the coward family. After you're gone, they'll all be known as cowards and quitters because you committed suicide. So you never do it. ever. So she did. Okay? So that was the way she gave out, lessons. Okay? So I never forgot that. So when I got these bad guys telling me to commit suicide, I said, holy crap, these are the devils. These are the bad guys. What are they talking to me for? I'm trying to be, a good soldier, fighting as hard as I can for my country, trying to fight these guys, these guards and these interrogators as best I can. What are the devils talking to me for? But luckily, my wife and mother and aunt were going to daily mass and saying a rosary for me. They had no word from me. The communists wouldn't let us write home for almost 3 years. So they didn't know who was alive, and they wouldn't let us get letters from our families either. They just told us our families had all left us and so on. So anyway, the prayers there let me see finally, after a couple months, after I was in terrible, terrible sin, that hatred was a problem. So I said, oh, hatred, because Sister Thomas Ann also gave us a thing on hatred. But I never had any trouble with hatred, because I never hated anybody. I never got mad at anybody, But I got mad up there. So anyway, so I realized, okay, I gotta hate. I gotta stop hating. You got a problem, you gotta fix the problem, right? So I, Guy Gruters, am gonna stop hating. I'm strong. I'm smart. I'm tough. I'm gonna stop hating. So 2 weeks go by and the hatred only gets worse, okay? Which is true for any sin. You can't do it on your own, you know what I mean? This is why Jesus comes down here. So I got on my knees in the prison cell and I said, Jesus, you gotta help me. You gotta help me. I can't stop this crap. I can't stop the voices. I can't do anything. So I'll try to pray, but I did. The rosary is an example of how bad off I was, how far I'd gotten from God. I mean, I knew it was out of distance, but I was, I think, typical to a lot of people in their 20s. They figure God's in the distance, but there's no way that he's going to be worried about me. I mean, he can't be worried about each individual. He can't be that powerful. I mean, he's got to take care of the sun and the winds and everything. He can't be taking care of me, So that's the way I felt. So I said, okay, I'm going to try to say the rosary, but I didn't remember any mysteries. I just remember it was 150 Hail Marys and an Our Father every 10. That's all I remembered. So I started saying that, and I did it 3 or 4 times every day, hours every day. And after 3 months, didn't look like I was making much progress, but after 3 months in my mind, I could say, Lord, forgive them. And when I said, Lord, forgive them, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. But I was never able to say that in my mind or anything. I mean, it was just completely against my hatred, okay? I just couldn't even believe saying it. When I said, Lord, forgive him, I said, oh my gosh, the prayers are working. He's working, he's working, okay? So I kept praying, and 3 months later, I'm literally praying for these interrogators and torturers. I'm praying for them all, I really am. I'm praying for my enemies. I never stopped that my whole life, all right? I understand the game. The game is really, we're all sinners, that's it, and you can't judge anybody else, and you gotta pray for everybody to get to heaven, okay? Because it's really important we get to heaven. It's really important, okay? So basically, I'm praying. So the last 3.5 years of prison camp were great joy and peace to me inside. I had great joy and peace in prison camp, under interrogation, under torture and stuff like that. And this is, bread and water. You got rats, and you're just covered with rats at night. You got hundreds and hundreds of rats playing their games as they're living above the cells. You're in concrete coffins. There's no windows or doors or anything like that. You're never allowed out of them. I'm talking, 7 days, 24/7. You're in the coffin. The only time you ever see the outside is when they open the door and you put your crap bucket outside, okay? And then a little while later, you get your crap bucket in. And a little while later, late morning, they come and they open the door and you get a little loaf of bread and a pint of water. A little loaf of bread and a pint of water twice a day. So you're in hunger pains for the first 1.5 years until you get down to about 120 pounds. Because that 600 calories, that little loaf of bread, and that water is enough to support 120 pounds. So you're 200 pounds, you have hunger pains for a year and a half until you get down to 120 pounds, then the hunger pains go away. Because the body is not saying that I need more food than this to support your weight. Your weight is so low that it doesn't need any more than just that food. So I thought that was very interesting that happened. You've got, the rats, live up above the cells it's a tin roof building, and there's like an attic with, there's a flat, ceiling on the cells, and then they live in the attic. And then at night they come down and they swarm all over. They play their games. They play their games starting at 5 or 6 at night. They're chasing each other. You can hear the game, playing tag. You hear one little rat going across the attic, and you hear the herd chasing them. The rat games, you can hear the rat games for about an hour or two. Then everything's silent. Then they're spread out all over the camp, coming into all the cells and picking up anything they can pick up, in the cells. And sometimes they bite you at night. Generally, they're not. They're just looking for things and so on, and they're not, biting you, but they're all over you. And then you got the spiders and the ants and the spiders, and remember, you got no books, you got no TV, you got no radio, you got nothing. I was lucky to have a cellmate for the first 2.5 years. Bob Craner, the guy I was shot down with. So we at least had each other, which is like having an encyclopedia next to you, okay, which you find out in prison camp, that every human being is an encyclopedia, better than any encyclopedia, much better, okay, knows a lot more than anything you can ever imagine. There's a library, everybody is a library. Where were you born? What was your house like? What was your street like? Who were your friends? Who were your mother? Who were your father? What was your mother and father? What were they like? What was your favorite expression? What did they say to you? Any compliments you ever got as a kid? Where'd you get it? What was your first teacher like? What was your kindergarten teacher like? What was your first grade teacher like? What was her name? Endless, okay? Endless information. You got somebody there with you in a prison cell, okay? Endless information. It's just wonderful, okay? But anyway, you got nothing else. So one of your big entertainment is the ant and spider fights. You set up the ant and spider fights with little pieces of bread that you put over in a corner. And the ants, they find it. The ants find it. First we got up there, you see these ants come under the a line of ants come under the door. And Craner says, look at those stupid things, following each other around like that, And I didn't know any different. I said, yeah, it's different, Within months, we realized that these ants are absolute masterpiece creation of God also, as are the spiders. And we set up the ant and spider fights. And as an example, you have you have 2 pieces of bread, one little piece and one piece that's twice as big. And here comes that line of ants, okay? And then at the fort, where they're going to the 2 different pieces of bread that they found, you have an ant that's giving signals. So the one that's twice as big, 2 ants go that way, then 1 ant goes this way. This guy's giving signals with his antennas, He's saying, you 2 go that way. Okay, next you go that way. Okay. Then you got the ants fighting the spiders. The spiders look where the ants are coming. They set up their webs, going down to the ground, and they're hovering there over the ant as they're coming in. These are, big ants. And as they jump on an ant, to get them, to bite them, to paralyze them, okay? And a lot of times, most of the times, the ant fights them off, which is amazing to see these fights. Sometimes the spider finally gets them, and then he hauls them up. He puts a different kind of web on the ant, and he jumps over one of the top webs, and the web that he's fastened to this guy doesn't have the sticky stuff on it, okay? He jumps over that web, and it brings the ant body up off the ground about 5 inches. And then he ties it off, and the ant's still alive. And for the next 2 or 3 days, he's sucking the juice out of the ant. The ant's still alive that whole time, okay? So, it's the adventure of the ants and the spider fights, a better adventure than anything I've ever seen in any movie in my life. This is just the inside. Then another one, the first cell we're next to in the first camp is next to McCain and Bud Day. Bud Day was our commanding officer, who was a Medal of Honor winner. Lance Sajan was a Medal of Honor winner. So, Bud Day and Lance and, John McCain are there, and Major Norris Overly is there, who saved both of their lives. Both of them were dead men. It was horrible how bad they were, injured in their shoot downs, and then how bad they were tortured. You know, Bud Day, when he was being hung for interrogation, they hung him by his arms for, weeks. He wouldn't give anything but name, rank, service number, date of birth. So the interrogator says to him, well, you don't have to answer the question, but you'll be paralyzed for life. And he was, because he couldn't use his hands at all, his fingers, nothing worked, all the nerves had been killed. So he couldn't use his hands at all, so he had to try to pick up the water, with his things like that. Couldn't wipe himself. Overly had to wipe, and go into the bathroom, stuff like that. McCain the same way. McCain couldn't use the arms. He had both arms broken badly, 2 or 3 breaks in each arm, one leg. The heel was facing up. You know how normally your toe faces up when you lay down? McCain's heel was up. The thing had been twisted, 180 degrees at the knee. Okay, so he couldn't use his legs, and Overly couldn't use his, Bud Day couldn't use his hands. So one of the happiest days of my life is remember he's gonna be paralyzed for life, right? 5 years after release, this is some 11 years later from this time that I first met Bud Day in the prison camp. I get a call from Bud Day's wife, and she says, Guy, Bud can sign his name. He can sign his name, Guy. She was ecstatic. Because his hands were starting to work again. And the only reason his hands were starting to work is when we were there with McCain and Overly and Bud Day next to us, John would spend 2 or 3 hours every day moving with his hand. He could use his hands, he couldn't use his leg. He would move his fingers back and forth like this for hours every day, Bud Day, to try to get circulation to his hands, to try to rebuild the nerves and the tendons and stuff like that. So it's good enough where he could actually use his hands again 11 years later, where the interrogator was sure that he'd be paralyzed for life, but he wasn't. He had trouble for life, but he wasn't paralyzed. He could actually sign his name. To be able to sign your name means you can use your hand pretty darn good, and your fingers pretty good. So when we first got in there, this is our first camp, and after the initial interrogations, and they're next door to us, and when one of the first days there, it's winter time. It's right after they took Saigon from us. So Saigon's dead. We're under this. We have one blanket. It's 30s and 40s degrees. You're shivering constantly. You have 2 pairs of pajamas. You're on boards on top of sawhorses. So you don't have any, there's no cushion like a mattress under your hand. So you're really cold. You would shiver for 2 and 3 days in the cold spells, day and night, 24 hours. Can you imagine shivering for 24 hours? And you're under a blanket. You got it pulled over you. You're in both pairs of pajamas. You never would wash your pajamas in the wintertime. You just wear the same ones for the whole winter because it's so cold. So basically, you're under the blanket. So you're under the blanket. That's how you sleep. So in the morning, when the guard comes to knock on the door, like at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, to get your crap bucket out, he knocks. He's coming up. You hear him next door. So you look out. I see. You see that Crainer's awake, but he's staring up ahead, and he's out of the covers. And I'm wondering, once he's out of the covers, so I'm back under the covers. Then I look again. He's staring. He's out of the covers, which is crazy. You're always under the covers. It's so cold. But I look at where he's staring, and there under the vent, there's a vent up 10 feet, a vent about, like 5 inches by 10 inches, open vent, okay? And there under that vent is a spider. The body of the spider is as big as my hand. The legs of the spider are like this, 1.5 to 2 feet, okay? This spider is sitting there on that wall. We had never seen anything like that. These are classic, Asian spiders. There's names for them. I forget what the name, but there's actually names for them. But this is how big they get. The body's as big as your bed. So we see the spiders, so we're sitting there looking at this thing, it's like, holy cow. So the guard, Boo Boo was a good guard. That's why his name was Boo Boo. Most of the guards had very bad names. They were not nice. So we were not nice. We were not nice. We would name them very bad names, you know. But this guy, you could tell he was a reasonable guard. He wasn't mad at anybody. He was 50 years old. He was the oldest guard at camp. He wasn't mad at anybody. He was just doing his job. So Boo Boo comes to the door, you know, and he motions us, you know, bring your, you know, what are you doing? You know, you should have your bucket out. You know, where's your bucket? You know, carry your bucket, put it out here. Don't waste time, you know. And we shake our head. He said, what? You know? So we point to the, Craner points to the spider above his head, right? So Boo Boo comes in the cell door, right? And he looks up, he goes, you know? And we go, yeah, we're not coming under that thing. He's gonna jump on us and eat us. Okay? I mean, that's what we're thinking. So Boo Boo looks, so he takes his keys out of his pocket. He backs up and he throws the keys at the spider, and the spider jumps down the wall a foot. He said, oh great, now he's gonna kill Boo Boo, eat Boo Boo, then come wipe us out, you know. So, anyway, Boo Boo walks under the spider, and we don't even want to look. We figure poor Boo Boo, I mean, he's dead. That thing's gonna jump right on top of him and kill him, you know. But the spider doesn't do anything. He picks up the keys, he backs up, and he throws the keys. Again, the spider jumps down a foot. He does it again. He gets under that spider and picks up the keys, backs up, and throws it again. This time the spider jumps off the wall all the way to the ground and charges Boo Boo. And here's Craner and I standing up by our bunk, you know, figuring that, I knew what was gonna happen. He's dead. You know, what are we gonna do? There's no place to go. We'll go back in the corner. Just take our chances, you know. So Boo Boo waits till the thing gets up to him. He picks up his foot and goes, stomps on the body of the spider and makes a big splash of spider juice, right? And he turns around and he says, So we sheepishly go to get the bucket, bring the bucket up and put it inside. So we're talking to we learned how to tap through the walls because of the guys next door, which is a story in itself. Remember, they don't want any communication between you. The interrogations are constantly screaming at you. You know, what are you doing? You know, you're the only one not giving us what we want. Everybody else is giving us what we want. Okay, you're staying here. Everybody's going to be here for a long time, but you're going to have really bad conditions because you won't give us what we want. And they're saying that to everybody. But because of communication, we know that nobody's giving them what they want. You see that? But you don't know that without communication. These interrogators are very good. They're very professional. They really have you believing that you're the only one resisting. See that? Okay? But not if you can talk. So somebody came in with a tap code. The tap code is 25 letters, no K. If you want to use a K, you use a C. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, no K. Elemental P, Q, R, S, T, U, P, W, X, Y, Z. So now I can do any letters, like A is, B is, C is, okay? So if I want to say hi, first of all, you call up the cell next door on the wall, really light taps, because the guards are always going around listening on the walls to make sure you're not doing this, okay? So really light taps, you go, I'll do it loud, but shaving a haircut. When the other guy's on the wall, your ear's on the wall, his ear's on the wall, you figure out a place where there's a rock going all the way through the concrete so that the sound carries really good. When he's on the wall, now I'm going to communicate the first word, hi, H-I is an example, okay? H, second row, third column. I, second row, fourth column. So I go, and wait, one word. He goes, if he understands that word. If he doesn't, he goes, if he doesn't, I go, I retransmit that word. This time he gets it. Next word. 4, 5, 6 hours on those walls every day, okay? So, when we first got in there, you know, I tapped out to Overly and McCain and Bud Day, I tapped out, you know, hello, with the code, 1 for A, 26 for Z, right? So I tap out hello. And the guy Overly taps back to me, hi. I said hello, he said hi. We don't know what he's talking about, okay? So then he uses my code and he says, listen at wash. We didn't know anything about a wash. We've been over a month up there. We've never been able to wash. But every Sunday in this camp, they would take you out to 6 little wash tubs, squares, you know, concrete squares. In each one of those, they had a cistern where they'd take out 6 cells at a time and put them in there. And you could throw water over yourself and you could rinse out your thing. You had about 5 minutes to, you know, rinse out your, in the summertime, rinse out one of your pair of pajamas and take a cistern of water and throw it over yourself, clean up. So we understood, listen, and wash, we didn't know about wash, but then the guy goes and the boo-boo says, indicates to us, you know, wash, so we understand we're going to wash. He indicates with sign language, we're gonna wash that first week. So as we're going out and we're passing another cell, a guy whispers from under the door, drain, just one word, drain. I was the last guy in line as a guard, trainer, and myself. And I just could barely hear drain. So when we got into the cell, he closed the door, puts the bar on the cell, or this little wash cell, and Craner turns to me, he said, what do you say? I said, drain. So we look down, and here between these 6 cells is an open drain, not a drain, you know, on top of a pipe or anything. This is a ditch about 3 or 4 inches deep and 2 inches wide, see? Where the water is taken out through the cells. So we immediately drop to the ground, and the guy next door, you know, they know we're new, and he's there and he says, you know, 25 letters, no K, you know, row them column, shaving a haircut, 2 bits, call up, and so on and so on. In a period of, you know, 5 seconds, he gave us a tap code. And we stood up, and of course the guard immediately opens the window, but it's too late, we got the code. So that's how we got the code. The first thing you got to anybody when he got into the prison camp, the new guys, the new shoot downs, is you got on that tap code. That tap code was the way that we survived and did good and were under command. We had total discipline in the camps. Guy, you know, data rank order in each cell, data rank order in each cell block, data rank order in each camp, data rank order in the overall command structure, okay? So the tap code, the communication is absolutely vital. So understand that. I mean, just the lesson is, appreciate so much iPhones, you know, the ability to have all the media that we have. This communication is such a blessing to us, you know, in the United States and the world. Don't look down on it. Be so thankful that we have it. It's saved our lives, you know, over and over and over again. So anyway, so those are the conditions in those camps. Now you had interrogations every week, and you're always being beaten up in the interrogations. Now the way we did the interrogations, the way the leadership had us do the interrogations is, the first guy in, we'd give them very hardline answers. What they want is they want weakness. If I ask you, you know, what do you think of the war, as an example, okay? And I ask you, what do you think of the war? And I ask you, what do you think of the war? And what do you think? All I need is one of you to say, I don't think we should be here in Vietnam. See that? And if any one of us says that, boy, you're dead. They are on you like a, they are on the torch and brainwash you like crazy because you got a weakness, okay? So basically, the first guy in gives them the most hardline answers they have about 5 different questions every week. So he gives them hardline questions, all 5 questions, and immediately taps through the wall when he gets back to his cell, and those, assuming the leadership doesn't override him, Those 5 questions are answered the same way by, or in this case, all 50 POWs in that camp that week, during the interrogations that go on all week long, every week, okay? So we always have the hardline answers first, but that's fine because you always have the answers given to you. You gave them this week, you gave them last week, you gave them the week before. But now I'm the first guy in, okay? So one of the times on Monday, I'm the first guy to be interrogated with the new questions. Well, the first of the new questions is that you should be very thankful to the government for giving you food, keeping you alive, giving you food. So I say, I'm not thankful to the government, I'm thankful to God. God gives me the food. No, God. Government gives you food. God doesn't give you food. I say, no, God gives me food. God gives the sun. God has the soil. God has the rain. God has the plants. God grows the food. God makes the food. Government doesn't do that, okay? And then God, the people grow the food. And then you take some of it and give it to us. The government doesn't give us food. God gives it. No, God. Government gives you food, stuff like this. Goes back and forth for literally 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm trying to be calm. And finally I get a little frustrated and I say, what's wrong with you? I don't care what they're telling you. There's a God, you got that? Okay? And when you die, it's gonna be you and Jesus Christ across the table. There's gonna be no government at the table. And you better come to that. I don't care what you're doing here, but before you die, you better come to Jesus Christ. Because he's your judge, no government is. And if you don't do that, then you're going to go to hell and burn forever. Okay? Just like that. So he goes absolutely nuts. There's 5 guards behind me. He goes bouncing off the friggin' walls. He's screaming at the top of his lungs. I will show you there will be nothing without, but this is screams, bad screams. There will be nothing without the government. Nothing, do you hear me? Nothing. You will have nothing without the government. Nothing. So he has them take me out to a hot box. It's like 11 o'clock in August. So they take me out to a hot box in the prison yard. The guards do, but they can't speak English. And one of these guards is filthy prison yards, filthy everything, because nobody owns anything. The government owns everything, so nobody cleans anything. Nobody takes care of anything. Communist countries are perfectly filthy in every respect, okay? Because nobody owns anything. And so basically, one of the guards picks up a piece of cardboard, just a piece of junk cardboard, and he makes a fanning motion with it, and he hands it to me. So and that's as I have 1 foot in the hot box and 1 foot out. So he gives me this fan, and I can't because it was so clear a signal from God. By this time I knew that God was totally in charge. But it was just such a comfort, So basically I got into the hot box, and I don't care about the fan, I don't care about anything. I'm sweating like a pig, it's really hot in there. And I throw the fan on the ground, and I'm just kneeling down, and I'm saying, thank you, God, thank you, Jesus, thank you, Mary. Over and over again, big smile on my face, tremendous joy in my heart. My body's about coming apart with joy. I'm just so happy that he did that for me, Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Mary. I'm just so smiling, so happy. Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Mary. This goes on about 5 minutes. Then in the distance I hear boom, then boom, then boom, boom. 30 minutes later, there's a big thunderstorm on the camp, which cools the hot box down to nothing. They take me out of the hot box, put me on my knees in a cell for 3 days, 3 nights, but that was minor compared to the hot box. The hot box can kill you, okay? So basically, God saved me from the hot box. So that was all, and he saved me because of the thanksgiving in joy for his favor at the fan. That's what I believe, that's what he did. But it was such a miracle, it was just unbelievable. The first message we got from Roll Commander Robbie Reisner. How are you guys doing on time? You got a little bit of time still? You okay? Okay. The first message that we got from Reisner through the wall. Robbie Reisner, who was he? He was a commander of all 15 prison camps in North Vietnam. He was going to be a Protestant minister. He'd been accepted to Bible school in 1942. Then Pearl Harbor came, and he thought maybe I should join the military. So he prayed about it, and he took the Air Force test to be in the Air Force, and he passed it by 1 point. So he said, well, I guess I should join the service. So he was a fighter pilot in World War II for 2.5 years. And in Korea, he was a fighter pilot flying F-86s. He had 8 MiG kills, so he was an ace, a MiG ace in Korea. But his crowning glory was commanding the prison camps in North Vietnam for 7 years. He was a POW for over 7 years, almost 7.5 years. So his first message just through the wall is he said, look, we're all Americans and God is our trust. So I want you to all join with me in praying as much as you possibly can. But on Sunday, when they sound their gong for siesta, we'll all say the Our Father, 23rd Psalm, and the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll know we're all having a service, whether we're torture, solitary, whatever. We know that every POW up here is having a service at 12 noon on Sunday, okay? And this is what we did. Then, after 3 years, we had very brave men of the Special Forces of the Army, the SEALs, the Air Force, flew the helicopters, and they came in on a prison raid to free up one of the prisoners, one of the prisons at Santé. There was 50 POWs in that prison, but they moved them out a few weeks before they came in there. So they came into the prison camps only 12 miles from Hanoi. The bombing halt had been on for years. They came in there out of nowhere on the deck, and they killed all the guards, and they examined every cell. 3 different times they went into every cell. There were no POWs there. So they thought they failed, and they got out okay. But it was the most successful prison raid in history, because the next day, they took all 15 prison camps. We were all in single cells or 2-man cells. They took all 15 prison camps and put us into 7 dungeons in a Hanoi Hilton. So now we're in dungeons like 45 men, 40 to 50 men in each of these 7 dungeons, okay? Now, that doesn't sound like much, but that's like heaven on earth. Having 45 men or girls, in the same cell. Like I said, every man is an encyclopedia. Every girl is an encyclopedia. It's just, it was infinite. It was an end to all boredom. It was just wonderful. We set up classes. We would do classes on the floor with pieces of brick. We used the concrete floor as classes. We're sleeping on concrete bunks on the side so we can teach classes, during the thing. And Reiser says, okay, now that we're together, we'll have 2-hour prisons. We'll have 2-hour church services on Sunday. Each dungeon will elect a chaplain. And we'll have first hour singing. We'll start out with Battle Hymn of the Republic, and then Amazing Grace, and so on and so forth, named 11 hymns. And then the second hour, the chaplain will find people that know the Bible well, and they'll have a number of people, 4 or 5, whatever you can find, tell Bible stories for the second hour, okay? So, but there's a rule of silence in the communist prison camp. So there was 300 of us alive out of 2,100 that had been shot down and not rescued. So at 12 noon on Sunday, and by the way, again, they thought it was a failure, that raid, but you can see it was the greatest raid in prison history because it didn't save just 50 people, saved all 300. So at 12 noon on Sunday, 300 of us built out the Battle Hymn of the Republic at the top of our lungs. And the guards come in with machine guns, with tear gun masks and everything like that, line us up against the wall, and they take Reisner and the other 6 leaders out of each of the cells and they bring them into the torture rooms, okay? And then they leave. And the next guy in data rank order in each dungeon gets up and says, gentlemen, they interrupted our service. And so we all start with the Battle Hymn of the Republic at the top of our lungs. Okay. And they come back in and they do the same thing. They take the 7 leaders and put them in 7 other torture cells. They did that 5 or 6 times, and then all torture cells, 40 of them, with all the irons and all the ropes and all the crap, were all filled up. So basically, the next guy stood up and said, gentlemen, we'll finish our service. Started again, and we started over again with a battle hymn and room. This time, they had no place to put us easy, so we finished the service. So the next day, it was my turn to monitor the interrogations of Meckenmeyer from our cell by the camp commander, telling them, that we're not gonna have any more of those church services, period, So basically, my ears are on the concrete floor, and you can hear conversations, and when it's all concrete, you can hear conversations in the next building over when your ear's on the ground, okay? So I heard this is firsthand story for me. So the camp commander he says, Meckenmeyer, we're not gonna have any church services. We torture and kill for every regulation. And we're not gonna have any church services. There is no God, okay? So Meckenmeyer says, by the way, Meckenmeyer is an Ohio guy. He's an Ohio guy, okay? So Meckenmeyer says, you can torture and kill every one of us, but as long as one man's alive, we're having that service. And they knew we weren't kidding, and we weren't. And so they let us have that service for the next 10 months before they moved us to a bunch of different camps. But at any rate, we had that service. And that was all because, and I think that's why God got us out of there, eventually got us out of there, because we had that service. The other thing that was interesting that happened there was we had, on the holidays were really bad, like Christmas, Thanksgiving, July 4th, Memorial Day, all these holidays were really tough in those prison cells because, we didn't have letters from our wives or anything like that for months and months and months. But the wives were doing really good at publicizing the fact that they weren't getting letters and so on. And sometime during that, after about 8 months in those cells, we all got letters, except one man, because we would not accept letters unless everybody got letters, and we would not write a letter unless everybody wrote a letter. So we wrote letters because they said, okay, everybody can write a letter. And we got letters, but one man in that cell didn't get a letter from his wife, and he had 5 kids from Louisiana. His name was Larry Barbay. Larry Barbay had a problem. Larry Barbay looked like a normal man, okay? But when he was a tough-looking guy. He was a lineman for Louisiana, for LSU, He was a lineman. He was a powerful man. He's a tough-looking man. Some guys look tough. He looked tough, But his problem was when he smiled, sincerely smiled, he looked like he's gonna eat you. So the interrogators, they don't know that this is just the way the guy looks or anything. They think he's some kind of fanatic, mean son of a gun that's unbelievably, rotten or something, okay? So they wouldn't give him a letter from his wife. So Larry had the biggest heart in the world. He was just such a nice guy. A lot of these big guys are just gentle as a son of a gun, right? And he was no exception. He was really a gentle guy. And we were so sad. We all thought his wife had left him, and we just figured, oh no, Larry, how could anybody leave Larry? He's such a nice guy, Is it probably because he looked so mean? She probably just couldn't put up with it, I guess, so she grew up with whatever. So anyway, so he would sing this song, and we all lived this song. We all were living this song. Looked like we were gonna be up there the rest of our lives. And virtually all of us had kids. I had 2 kids, and everybody had almost everybody had at least 2 kids. And so he would sing this song, and we'd have him sing this at each of our holidays. So the song is, I asked a little boy to call his daddy. He said he couldn't inside. And when I asked him what was wrong, here's what the boy replied. My daddy is only a picture in a frame that hangs on the wall. Each day I talk to my daddy, but he never talks at all. I tell him all of my secrets and all of my little plans. And from the way he looks at me, I think he understands. The angels took Daddy to heaven when I was just going on 3. But I'll bet they never told him how sad and lonely we'd be. I tried to cheer up my mommy when the tears rolled down her face. My daddy is only a picture. I'm trying to take his place. You got 45 tough guys in this room. Everybody's crying like a baby. And we'd have them sing that at every holiday. Christmas was the worst. You know, I spent 6 Christmases up there. I was only up there 5 years and 3 months, but I was shot down on December 20th, you know. But Christmas is such a joy back here. And of course, you know, you're a good believer and you're saying, look, the important thing about Christmas is, you know, Jesus Christ was born and he saved us and he gets us to heaven. We got a chance now, okay? You know, that's the important thing. But there's so much that we've put into Christmas with the family and the friends and the gift giving and the joy and the love, and everybody is just got a smile on their face. You know what I'm saying? And when you miss Christmas in the you know, miss a U.S. Christmas, it's just, you just keep hoping against hope that sometime you're gonna get home for Christmas, you know, that kind of thing. Okay, so at any rate, Robbie Reisner, 10 years after release, Robbie Reisner was a guy that had the church service and everything. What you want, babe?
I wondered when you're coming home.
Oh, pretty soon. I love you, I'm talking. God bless me. This is one of the angels on earth. My wife. Ain't God, wives are angels. Okay? Don't think they're not. They are angels. Compared to men, they are angels. So anyway, what was I saying? Where was I going?
Rob Reisner.
What was it?
Rob Reisner was the other.
Oh yeah, Robbie Reisner, okay. So Robbie Reisner, 10 years after release, somebody asked him, when he was walking to the prison camp, Bud Day, the Medal of Honor winner, I was talking to the commanding officer of our unit, you know, Bud Day, the guy that had the hands that was hanging, okay? Bud Day started singing the Star Spangled Banner as he's walking to the torture room, as Robbie Reisner and the 6 guys, other 6 are. So we all, you know, 300 guys built out the Star Spangled Banner at the top of our lungs, right? And when that happened, and so 10 years after release, somebody asked Rob Reisner, what did you think when you were walking to the torture room and they started singing the Star Spangled Banner? He said, geez, I felt 9 feet tall. Okay, so Ross Perot heard that, so he had a 9-foot bronze statue commissioned of Robbie Reisner. He asked Reisner, where do you want that? He said, well, I never went to college, so I'd like to have it at the entrance to the Air Force Academy because that's where a lot of our leadership is trained. Okay, so that at the entrance to the Air Force Academy now is that 9-foot statue of Robbie Reisner, you know, the great Christian who got us all to pray in a communist prison camp perfectly, you know. It was just so great leadership. I could tell you a million stories like that, but at any rate, I just wanted to tell you those to give you an idea of the conditions and some of the good people we had. We had really good people up there. We were very lucky that we had that communication because that let us fight as a group. Okay, trying to fight in those conditions as individuals. I don't even want to think what would happen because these interrogators were really good. You know, at convention, you're the only one resisting, right? It was awfully nice to know that everybody was doing a code of conduct exactly the same. Nobody giving them a thing, you know, all that kind of crap. It didn't matter what happened. Okay, any questions or anything like that? Be happy if you want to hang around. Anybody want to ask questions? Oh, I'll tell you one thing that's fun is my wife waited 6 years for me, you know, and when they said that I left when my little daughters were 1 year and 2 years old when I left for Vietnam. When I came back, they were 7 and 8, you know. So when they got the word that we were gonna be brought back into, we were brought to 7 different bases, we were gonna be brought into Alabama, and we were gonna be able to meet our families for the first time in 6 years, right? My little girl, Sherry, who had been the youngest, she said, oh, good, now I get to see what daddy looks like. 7 years old, so that was good. But Sandy had 5 kids since then. We got 7 kids, 21 grandkids. Her last 3 kids were in her 40s. So, she's my angel. I got an angel. I really did. I got a friggin' angel. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm in deep trouble on Judgment Day. I'm in such trouble. Are you kidding me? These girls are so good. They're so good. Oh, that's what I wanted to say too, is that these girls, okay, I said this in prison camp. I saw this in prison camp. This is like Mary. This is like Mary, the mother of God, okay? Watching Jesus be crucified. I said this in prison camp. I said, look, guys were complaining about this is really bad, this torture and all this kind of crap. I said, look, we got it a lot better than our wives, Gruters, how can you say that? And I said, I'll give you a choice, okay? You're here, and your wife is back there, and she doesn't know that you're alive or what's happening to you. Or, your wife can be here, and you're back there, and you don't know if she's alive or not, or what's happening to her. Take your pick. You're right. Much rather be on the front line than at home with my mate on the front line. I don't even want to think about that, and that's what these girls have to go through. And I'm telling you, that's just like Mary. Here's Jesus on the front line, you know what I'm saying? And there's Mary, and she can't do a thing about it. And she's got to watch her only kid be tortured like that. And that's why she's, they're going to make her co-redemptrix, you know what I mean? He's the Redeemer. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And that's where, the heart, the love is, that's what you got. You got such a great gift that we have these hearts in our family, because we can fight, we can work, but we don't have that heart. That's why they say, they're the heart of the family, because it's so true. I mean, to me, I've seen that my whole life. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying desperately. I'm 83 now. I'm trying desperately to live a couple years good. So I think, I thought we were going to forget all those 80 years. I thought that was the promise, right? You're going to forget all that? Forget it, forget it. Thanks a lot for listening. I enjoyed talking to you guys. You guys are so wonderful around here. I hate to say it, but this area, I was brought up in North Jersey, right? This area here and the South, are such nice people, such good people. I mean, it's true. You guys are so lucky. And I know you know that, because you all come back after college to here, to bring up your family. But it's true. What a gift this place is, this whole area. What a gift. Lucky duckies. Thank you for coming. Enjoyed talking to you. It's great. If anybody want to have a question or two, I'd be happy to answer it. I think it's time, right? You only have it a certain time, right?
So I have to be out at a certain time, but I'm curious, how long have you and your wife been married now then? How many years?
How many years?
Yeah, how many years have you and your wife been, or how many?
Oh,
How many years have you and your wife been married? Yeah.
1963, so 63 years.
Awesome.
63 years.
Do you have those pictures that you said?
Oh, yeah, let me show. And I went back in this is a good story. I went back, and that guy that saved my life? One of the Misties became a millionaire, multi-millionaire with a marina on the West Coast. And so for the last 15 years, he goes over there and spends $1 million a year at least, building schools and libraries in these small towns like the ones we were flying over and that I was captured in and so on. And he spends over a year in Vietnam every year for 15 years. So he has really good friends now in North Vietnam, all right? So when Misty set up a trip in March of 2023, and they set that trip up without me having to do anything with it or whatever, you know, and I went along with it with my son, his wife, and Sandy couldn't make the trip, didn't have the health to make that trip. But my daughter, my son, his wife, and my daughter did make the trip. And one of these friends of his found the guy that saved my life. And he found him, and I never told Misty or anything what had happened on that, but on the shoot down story I told you. But one of these guys in one of these villages said, well, ask him if his life was saved by bayonets. If it was, I'm the guy that did it. You know, I'm the guy that captured him. So the Vietnamese guy asked the Misty guy, and the Misty guy asked me, and I said, yeah, the guy saved my life with bayonets, okay? So when we went back, the same Vietnamese guy set up a 2.5-hour trip out into the countryside from the coast of North Vietnam. We went to this little village where I was shot down with those guns, you know, and there was a little Catholic church there, by the way, okay? And the fighter had crashed, you know, when it went upside down in the yard of the Catholic church. And this guy that saved my life had my ejection seat in his living room still to this day. When I was there, when I went to visit him, it was there. But anyway, so this is a picture of the dinner. He invited me to dinner. We had 20 people from the village there, you know, at the dinner. 20, maybe 30, maybe 40 people came in through that afternoon. And he fixed me a meal. He fixed me a meal, an afternoon meal for us, you know. And the meal was cassava roots cooked by his wife. First time I knew that his wife was the one that cooked me that first cassava meal, that she cooked me the same meal when we went back, okay? So, anyway, this is a picture of the first of all, I'll read you the letter that night. I was so grateful that he had done all that. That night, I wrote him a letter in Thanksgiving for the afternoon. I remember I had my son and her wife and daughter there. So I wrote this letter to him, okay? I always just respected the hell out of this guy, even when I was in prison camp, because, I mean, that's like, you know, us here. You got somebody coming down here, and we surround him with bayonets, protecting him from the villagers here that want to kill him, okay? This is a rare game. This is a rare man. You know, I mean, this is one of the few times this was done, okay? It's just, you know, he's doing what is the right thing. I don't care, you know, don't kill him. Okay? Dear Phan Tien Diong, it is my hope to thank you for your wonderful hospitality to me and my family when we came to visit you and your dear wife at your home. I and my family members, Misty, Ryan, and Rachel, and Mr. C, C is the Vietnamese guy that found him, appreciated so much the conversation with the excellent food and drink provided so generously to us at your home. My full name is Guy Dennis Gruters, and I was an Air Force pilot for the United States flying an F-100 fighter aircraft when your nation's gunners shot down our aircraft flown by Major Bob Craner and me. After capture by the militia unit under your command, you and your men took excellent and very honorable care of me until delivery to my first place of captivity in your village. My life was preserved from sudden death at the hands of an understandably angry group of civilians waving machetes. You actually commanded your men to draw their bayonets, fix them on their rifles, and encircle me protectively until the danger was past. I was a dead man, but you and your men saved my life. This let me live to return to my dear wife Sandy, who patiently waited 6 years for my return. I departed Hanoi on March 14th, 1973, exactly 50 years ago this day. I didn't know that until I dated this letter. God had me go back for a dinner at this guy's house 50 years to the day that we got on the transports at the Hanoi airport to go back to the States. 50 years to the day. And I didn't know that until I dated this letter. I said, holy crap, what are you doing, Lord? Okay. I departed Hanoi on March 14th, 1973. This was March 14th, 2023, okay?
exactly 50 years ago this day, flying to the state of Alabama, arriving to a reunion with Sandy on March 17th, 1973. We had 2 children, 7 and 8 years old at the time, Dawn Marie and Cheryl Lee. You have 8 wonderful children, and we now have 7, all because of your bravery that day on December 20th, 1967, facing down an overwhelming number of angry people with soldiers under your direct command. I believe in God and an eternal life forever and ever. And I believe that you and your wife and family and your friends that you so kindly invited to share our special reunion will join Sandy and I and our family and friends in millions of parties throughout eternity to celebrate our friendship and that of the American and Vietnamese peoples, once enemies but now the best of friends, a friendship and deep brotherly love lasting for all time in heaven. All my love, that of my family, relatives, and friends, and that of the American people. Guy D. Gruters, Sandra L. Gruters, Dawn, Cheryl, David, Ginger, Ryan, Rachel, Amber, Tyler, Carolina, Misty, and Matt. Okay, and by the way, they threw out communism in 1985. Okay, based on Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, they brought him up. He said, get rid of the collective farms, get rid of all this communist crap. You know, go independent, and every family said give every family 1 acre. They did. By 91, they had 2 acres. Every family in Vietnam has 2 acres of good farmland. They all have little farm places on their farms. All the villages are little businesses, okay? It's not communist, not government owned, it's all independently owned by individual. They're as good as we. They're wonderful people. The Vietnamese are wonderful, wonderful people. They love Americans. You know, when we were going through, you know, because the American soldiers like us, okay? The American soldiers, when we went through Vietnam, we took really good care of the Vietnamese civilians. You know, that's 20-something million people in South Vietnam. And the North Vietnamese knew that because they have all friends, they're back and forth and so on. So when we were going through on these convoys of 4,500 men of mean airborne troops, mean American airborne troops, okay? We're going through these, on a 200-mile trip, and I'm on one of the trucks, because I'm the forward air controller from the ground. We have guys in the air and on the ground. So as we're going through these, all the villages would come up to us. Thousands of people would come up to the trucks, okay? And the cry was always the same. Chocolate Joe, Joe, chocolate, chocolate Joe. That's all they knew in English. So all the guys would throw, not just the chocolate, you know, there's chocolate in the sea ration. Back then, our soldiers used sea rations, you know, not like they have now. So they throw all the rations out, all our clothes out, extra food. They'd throw everything they had at these crowds, okay? You know, just this is why Europe loved us after World War II, because our army didn't abuse civilians. You know, most armies, they go into these civilian towns and they steal everything they can. They ruin the women and everything else. Our guys didn't do that. And the French do that, the Germans do that, the Russians do that, the British do that. They all do that. We don't do that. Okay? So they love us. The Vietnamese love us. If I want somebody, if I'm in a fight, if I'm in a real infantry fight or any kind of fight, okay, and I have a choice of who's on my right or my left besides an American, it's Vietnamese. Okay? I'm telling you, these guys are our friends. They really honestly are. Well, anyway, here's the picture. You can come and see it. I've got a slide of it somewhere here. Yeah, this is a picture of the guy. This is a picture of the guy. You see that okay? This is a picture in his home. This is the guy that had my ejection seat in his living room, and the guy that saved my life. Okay? He is 84 years old here. He is wearing the uniform that he wore when he captured me. He is wearing the uniform. He has 8 kids. His youngest kid has a Down syndrome, you know. All right. I'll show you a picture of Saigon. That's a good picture. To give you an idea, you know, I tell you, this guy was in bad shape, right? Here he is at the academy on the left. You see that? Saigon. And there he is on the right. Okay. This is how he looked, except Saigon was worse cause he had these bones sticking out of his leg. This is a picture of a guy under starvation. Okay, and Saigon was worse off than that. Okay. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer them. Go. Yeah.
Was the guy who captured you, was he part of the Vietnamese army or Vietnam?
The guy that captured me, his unit was a guard, I thought they were regulars, because they were dressed, you know, dressed sharply in uniform, okay? But they